Well, it looks like everybody's settling in. Looks like we have a really good group today. So I appreciate everybody coming in and talking with us a little bit about the OpEx model, using OpEx for ransomware protection and so forth. A lot of new concepts are going to be talked about today, and I hope you really do enjoy it. So I think what we're going to do, I'm starting to see the attendee list sort of settle down a little bit. So I'm going to go ahead and introduce our panelists today and our speakers. So Nathan, would you like to introduce yourself? First off, you're our host and sort of our sponsor for this whole session. So Nathan is the owner of Managecast Technologies. Nathan?
Yes, so yeah, I'm the owner and founder of Managecast Technologies, and I'll tell you a little bit more about our company and what we do. I want to appreciate everybody for taking time today to attend this webinar, and hopefully you get something useful out of it. Thank you.
So Nathan, Steve, you want to introduce yourself while Nathan adjusts his microphone?
Sure, Steve Costigan. I'm the Senior Director for the International Solutions Architects here at Zadara. So I'm responsible for a lot of the integration work that we're doing with Veeam globally, especially in the international markets, but also with some of our US partners.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Steve. Steve and I have been working together for about 15 years, so it's really always good to have him on board. Corinne, would you like to introduce yourself from Veeam?
Sure. Yeah, I work for Veeam. I work under the product strategy section as a technologist. I've been with the company for a little over 3 years, and I do a lot of the content writing and gathering feedback from the field to make sure our product's feeding the rest of our service providers the kind of components that they need.
Perfect, perfect. Thank you so much for joining. And Nathan, have you gotten your microphone up?
Yes, can you hear me?
There you go, perfect. We sure can now, yes.
Okay, well, I'm Nathan Golden. I'm the owner and founder of Managecast Technologies, and I'll be telling you a little bit more about what we do, but we use both Veeam and Zadara within our services, and we thought this would be good content for people that are concerned about protecting their backups from ransomware, and I appreciate everybody taking some time out of their day to join us in this webinar.
Perfect. Thank you, Nathan, for that. And as far as housekeeping goes, will be some of the questions, if you post some questions in your console there, we can handle some of the questions if they're appropriate for given slides. Otherwise, we might wait for some of them to be at the end of the session. So so either way, whatever you prefer there. But I will be monitoring some of those. So the agenda today is going to be, Nathan's going to talk a little bit about Managecast and really what they do, as well as a couple of slides and go-tos at the end of this. The IT security, this balanced approach to ransomware and how we sort of protect ourselves. You know, if you do too much of this and not enough of that, that's not really the balance. If you do not enough of this and too much of something else. So Corinne and Steve are going to talk a little bit about how to keep this whole thing in balance. Resource isolation is really the big key differentiator for this. How do we keep these resources isolated so things, ransomware items don't propagate down the chain, if you will? The application layer protection, and then we're going to introduce the zip code 32110, the 100% OpEx model for protection. So we're going to talk about that in pretty good detail. And then this new term called immutability. Immutability basically is going to be the way that we provide that air gap, if you will, or that isolation, and then we'll do some Q&As. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Nathan, and he's going to talk a little bit about Managecast.
All right, thanks, Doug.
You bet.
If you want to, there you go.
Yep.
So as Doug indicated, I'm the owner and founder of Managecast Technologies, and Managecast is 100% focused around backup and disaster recovery. It is all that we do. We've been in business for 20 years, and we are SSAE SOC audited and a Veeam Gold Cloud Connect service provider. And from the beginning, we wanted to not just be a target for offsite backups, but we wanted to ensure backups were running properly for our clients. And so we have a culture of fanatic data protection within our organization. When a call comes in from one of our clients for data recovery, it is very much a hero or zero situation. So it is imperative we know the data is being protected. And in that vein, I'm also very proud to say we recently won a Veeam Innovation Award at VeeamON back in June for our Veeam monitoring portal we developed that helps us monitor our clients and shows them the status of their backups. Managecast is based in Cincinnati, Ohio, but we have customers all over the United States and 13 countries. And often when I speak with potential new customers, one of the most frequent questions I hear is, how do I protect my backups from ransomware? And let me be clear, using Veeam Cloud Connect combined with Veeam Insider Protection automatically provides a very high level of ransomware protection. But for those that wanted the ultimate in ransomware protection, we partnered with Zadara to offer immutable backup storage. And it is our focus on data protection and our vast experience in this space that allows us to help our clients protect their data. Thanks, Doug.
Thank you so much, Nathan. Perfect. So I'm gonna toss it over. Steve and Corinne are gonna go kind of back and forth through some of these slides, a little bit what I like to call sportscaster mode. So they're gonna kind of go back and forth and have a conversation. It makes it a whole lot more interesting for you, folks. So at this point, I'm gonna turn it over to Steve and take it away.
Thanks, Doug. So I want to start really with the use case. Why we're seeing the influx of ransomware and why organizations are so frightened about the impacts of ransomware within their environments. And there's been some pretty high profile ones, certainly across the last 3 or 4 years. But there's an interesting one here that is actually Norsk Hydro. Now, Norsk Hydro are a Nordic aluminium or aluminum, as you in the US will refer to it, global operator, and they were hit by a Lokagoga ransomware attack, and this took offline 35,000 employees across 40 countries, and the key is that they gained entry 2 to 3 weeks before actually instigating this attack. Now, a month afterwards, they were still trying to recover 160 manufacturing plants, and it took months and months to fully recover. Now, a key impact of this was that at the time of the attack, this was undetectable by almost all of the AV providers, 67 in fact. And the net effect of this was a $61 to $72 million estimated cost to Norsk Hydro. Now, the effects of this attack was so extreme that they were unable to actually pay any ransom. And the theory is that maybe this actual ransomware attack was maybe a play on the global aluminium market rather than an attack on Norsk Hydro for them to pay up. So some interesting dynamics on maybe how the ransomware attacks are morphing into not just attacking single organizations, but maybe attacking markets and multiple organizations. And when we look at the impact of this into other areas, if we look at Travelex is a UK currency exchange that is used by most of the UK banks and a number of banks across EMEA. And a lot of the online foreign exchange currencies were going through Travelex. Now, they failed to patch their VPN systems. And because of that, they were compromised by Revil, and Revil threatened that they were going to expose hundreds, thousands of account details, and that would have meant a GDPR data breach where that could impact an up to 4% of their gross turnover fine from the European Union. Now, the other key aspect of this was because of the way that they infiltrated Travelex, they deleted the backup. Now, this was not just a let's encrypt the data, let's not just extract the data, but let's also delete the backup stream, and they were forced to pay a $2.3 million ransom. And the subsequent impact of this to Travelex is they were forced to be put up for sale, and they are an organization that is in deep trouble. But it's not just the international market. Closer to home to you guys in the US, there has been a massive attack onto US states and local governments over certainly the last 2 years. And there was an interesting article here that I found from Dan Lohman on a US government technology magazine. And you see here the impacts into Louisiana government, Florida City paying ransomware, New Orleans declares a state of emergency following a cyber attack. So this is very real into US local government and state government. Why? Because maybe a lot of those environments are running on legacy environments. Maybe they're not patching them. Maybe they don't have the IT skills to patch those environments at the rate of discovery of vulnerabilities within their software. So this is not something that is just evolving. It's been evolving since 2015, but it is accelerating at an exponential pace. We've already seen this growth from 2019. It's continuing through 2020, through to 2021. And this is becoming big business for organized crime, maybe even different actors, state actors from different countries. And therefore, you've got to be thinking maybe in a slightly different dynamic in the way that you think about your data. So in terms of that, we believe that there's 5 ways that you should be thinking about protecting against ransomware. Corinne, I want to bring you in at this point, because obviously you see things from a Veeam's perspective. Do you want to talk us through what you see around utilizing these layers? Corinne? Sorry. Okay.
Yeah, thank you, Steve. As Steve mentioned, it is out there, it's very real, and it's happening nearly every day, these large scale attacks. And what we're going to talk about now is kind of how you can protect that. And the number one out of this entire list, I would say, is education. And knowing your resources to be able to educate your end users. KnowBe4 is a huge institution trying to promote education of end users. They have platform programs that you can send phishing attacks out to your end users to see how many people actually click on that message. And according to their latest report, just taking the time to educate your users can make you 85% less likely to have an internal attack due to a phishing problem. And of course, the next 2 we've been kind of familiar with over the years, limiting your access, making sure only the people who need access to a resource have that access to the resource. And of course, layers. There is no magic bullet. I don't care if you've locked every entity out of your system. We've seen reports in the past where a network's been completely locked out from the outside, but someone picked up a flash drive from the street and plugged it into the computer, and suddenly their entire system has a fatal flaw. And then we come to patching. We think that's a simple concept, but according to the last Kaspersky report that came out, 23% of the ransomware family attacks came from WannaCry in the last year. And WannaCry was actually patched almost 3 years ago, meaning all of these machines that have been infected by this virus, of course, they weren't successful, but we know that it's out there and these machines aren't being patched as readily as they should be, leaving us open to those types of attacks. And of course, in the end, backup. Backup is becoming a large part of the conversation and a large part of the ransomware conversation due to resilient ransomware now attacking backups because they know that you're fail-safe. So protecting your backups, making sure you have consistent backups is your ultimate last line of defense. And then of course, we'll talk about that immutability factor and offline storage here a little later, which will help protect those backups even further.
Thanks, Corinne. So obviously, we talk about CIA when we talk about our security infrastructure, but it's not what most Americans will refer to as the CIA. This isn't an organization looking to look into what you're doing, but we refer to this more around confidentiality, the availability, and the integrity. And this is that balanced approach where we have to look at maintaining that systems are available, but only to the people that we want them available to, and we have to ensure that data is confidential, and we have to ensure the integrity of that. From a backup perspective, where do you feel that integrity piece plays from the insurance factor in a ransomware? environment. So do you see, the recoverability as a key point that people should be looking to address?
Well, not to make light of it, but I want to say, well, yeah, if your backups aren't in a consistent state and you haven't taken steps to protect them so that they remain in a consistent state, you're not going to have data to be able to restore from. So integrity is just as important as those backups being available. And in any type of confidentiality, you need to make sure no one can read that data that isn't
Okay.
supposed to read that data.
So encrypting those backups and having them encrypted is part of that confidentiality thought process as well when we're looking at this end-to-end balanced approach as well. Okay, so you mentioned some ransomware entry points and the key parts that you mentioned there, Corinne, know before as a service that people can use to test their readiness, and GoFish, I know you've been pushing that one on previous events that we've done together. But the other interesting aspect is where we see some of these entry points coming from. Phishing is undoubtedly a massive area that is being exposed from many organizations. It's the #1 mechanism that is being used today as a ransomware entry point. The other one is remote desktop protocol. And the reason that I want to highlight RDP is because as we move more and more to this home working environment that we're in today, organizations are exposing remote desktop protocol endpoints for VDI type environments. And it's important that you understand they have to be protected, as well as software vulnerabilities. It's not just bugs and people not fixing those bugs that are causing these ransomware entry points. And of course, as Corinne alluded to, education and therefore user error is a really critical piece in looking at these entry points. So if we look at the attack vectors, they come from many different areas. They can be drive-by attacks onto your wireless environment. They can be attacks coming in via web services. Maybe they are unpatched. Maybe there's user errors. Maybe there's password errors. People not using multi-factor authentication, and of course the email gateway. So it's important that you're able to look at your estate and look at the entry points and where those entry points will get somebody into your system. Okay. Now, on top of that, you've got access to internal systems. Maybe this is your Active Directory server that is then going to provide access to all of your global environments. And this was a key part of the Norsk Hydro piece, was they were able to gain entry to their Active Directory environment and therefore control every single desktop. So if we combine that with things like NAS servers, as Corinne also highlighted, the WannaCry exploit, those are still being seen in the wild, and they are being distributed via NAS servers. And of course, then there's the backup, ensuring that you've got a capability to ensure that your backups have integrity. Now, in ensuring that integrity, what Zadara believes is that we try and implement a virtualized air gap infrastructure, and we're going to talk around the immutability as we go through this, but some key elements are network isolation, using our virtual private storage array technology, disk isolation, out-of-band management, and virtual networks. Now, Nathan, you have an interesting point to raise around air gaps and physical versus virtual or logical ones. Do you want to share your thoughts there?
Yeah, sure. Thank you. And so I'm participating in different social media, things like Spiceworks, Reddit, and others. And I hear a lot of talk about air gapping backups. And I will not argue that a true air gap is a way to protect your data from ransomware, no question. However, I think that some people get so focused on that air gap that they may be exposing themselves to other risks outside of ransomware. Normally, a true air gap involves physical media that becomes disconnected from your network, which it becomes disconnected through manual intervention, i.e. humans get involved to move things around. And then you have to ask yourself, are you getting your data off-site? Are you getting your data off-site frequently? What happens when you go on vacation? Is that data still being moved off-site? So I think that when you start introducing a manual process into your backup strategy, you are opening yourself up to additional risk. So just be aware of that. And there's ways to achieve air gap or virtual air gap while maintaining that automation so that you're not introducing more risk into your environment than if you didn't do that. So that's my comment, is that a lot of people get really fixated on that air gap, and you really need to step back and make sure you're not opening yourself up to additional risk when you do that.
That's a really interesting piece, Nathan. What I've seen here in the UK, this whole global pandemic that we've seen has restricted people's access into data centers. So some of those organizations that relied on that physical air gap have been unable to change their tapes, for example, and that's created an exposure point for those sort of organizations. Have you seen a similar thing in the US?
Yeah, absolutely. Although, again, with our clients, we're trying to address the issue without the air gap. So usually we're trying to get people to convert from that manual process to an automated process. But absolutely, the pandemic is definitely not helping with that manual process.
Okay, cool. So from a Zadara perspective, we've built a cloud storage infrastructure that we're really pleased to be partnering with Managecast, where we're able to provide complete separation from our virtual storage arrays all the way through to the individual disks and isolation and separation. So this enables us to provide additional capabilities that enables this partnership with expert service providers like Managecast to provide extra levels of capability. And this is a capability that can also be deployed on premises as well as into service providers. But the key from we seeing around network separation and our VPSA technology being deployed in real world environments and even in enterprise customers is this ability to have a VPSA that is on a primary network, using our VNI networks to have a layer 2 only network operation to a subset of customers or a subset of clients from a Windows desktop or a Mac desktop, etc. And then providing that capability of enabling separate backup networks to be utilized to provide a virtual air gapping in terms of the physical networking, and providing a capability that allows scale but separation. And this is to aid in terms of protecting yourself rather than being a complete end-to-end solution on its own. To provide the end-to-end solution, this is where Veeam comes into its own, and I'm going to hand back to Corinne about the whole Veeam cloud data management platform and what that brings.
Thank you. So the cloud data management platform is what we offer for not only our backup, but disaster recovery as a service process for our providers. The center and heart of our product is definitely our backup and replication service, which allows you to be able to not only backup, but make additional copies and do replications to have on-demand types of resources, down to the orchestration layer where we're able to create a disaster recovery site for you. And of course, monitoring is always important when it comes to making sure everything's kicking off, everything's going as you expect it. We started out in the virtual sector, but then we since have moved into the physical, cloud, and even software as a service with some of our other offerings. And one of our newest implementations is going to be our universal storage API, which allows you to start tapping into that machine learning and business intelligence section that we seem to be starting to roll into now. You can go next and we'll kick it right into the backup zip code, or what at least I like to refer to as the backup zip code. The first section should look fairly familiar if you've worked with any type of backup industry, which is 3 copies of your data on at least 2 different media types, and one of those which should be off-site. Well, with how ransomware is evolving, becoming more resilient, we're needing to come up with more creative ways to ensure that your backups and your data is protected. And that's where the 1 and 0 come in. 1 means you need to have at least one of those copies that are either immutable or air-gapped. We covered air-gapped pretty heavily earlier, but immutable means that it's on a type of storage that can't be altered. No one from your administration, no one can hack into the binary level, no one's able to alter this data, so you're able to send a secure copy somewhere. Notably, one of our features that we've added is something called Object Storage Object Lock, which is offered through AWS, which is able to lock your backups in a cloud type of infrastructure. And then we come to 0. Making sure that your backups are able to be recovered is just as critical as doing your backups. If you haven't tested to make sure those work, you're not going to be able to guarantee that you're going to be able to recover the data when you need to recover it. We can move next.
Thanks, Corinne. So if we take this as an end-to-end, your primary storage could be on pretty much anything that's out there. You could be running vSAN, you could be running on another vendor's enterprise storage array, but then you want to provide both local and remote copies of your data. And this is where Zadara's VPSA storage array technology comes into play, where we can provide this scale up and scale out capability. And this ability to utilize our object storage in conjunction with Managecast and combine that with a complete end-to-end solution, utilizing things like Cloud Connect from Managecast, where you can utilize the Zadara VPSA technology in their infrastructure with immutability. And they're able to provide you with a complete solution, whether that's a backup recovery solution or a disaster recovery solution. And really, this is where utilizing Veeam's capacity tier with data immutability, this object lock capability that Zadara is able to offer from its object storage in conjunction with Managecast, means that we're able to prevent from some of these deletions of data from within a ransomware attack, and also the service that Managecast is offering in conjunction with Cloud Connect, as we mentioned, prevent from this malicious employee attack. So it's a key area in terms of just thinking about all of these attack vectors and all of these attack points and how you're going to mitigate against them, because the protection mechanism is changing. As we look at a malicious file that gets created and then it gets downloaded, maybe from a phishing attack, maybe from an exploit, and then at that point that's within your system, you're continuing to create your backups, and you may have a number of backups within that 0-day attack. Then the attack is launched. The AV vendor may have some awareness, they build a signature, they release, and utilizing Veeam and Managecast capability of being able to clean that environment by ensuring that the AV is pushed into the recovery stream. It means that you're able to answer a capability of using a restore mechanism that ensures that you're filtering those VMs out from any viruses that are impacting those machines before you then put them back live. The reason being is in many instances, if the virus is embedded into the backup stream and it's embedded into the VM, if you do a restore, then you're simply just restoring that 0-day attack again, and then the process continues. And this is maybe what we've seen with a number of these ransomware attacks that have been laying dormant within an environment for an extended period of time. And this is where maybe just looking at 14, 30-day retentions may not actually be enough for your environment as you move forward. So combining a bulletproof ransomware protection from Managecast enables you to utilize not just the backup capabilities, but the disaster recovery capabilities, combining that with Zadara's VPSA technology and with Veeam as a complete, flexible, 100% OpEx combination means that you're able to protect your environment for the long term. And the key here is around ensuring that you've got data that you've got recoverability from. And this is where the key elements of utilizing that object lock capability that Zadara provides, along with that enablement of that feature from Veeam, and it being provided by an expert service provider like Managecast, means that you're able to protect yourself as an end-to-end solution. So protection from insider threats. Corinne, do you want to take this from what this means to a customer that's going to utilize Cloud Connect and how this works within the Veeam environment?
Yeah, we talk a lot about how ransomware and a lot of external types of threats, but unfortunately, sometimes we have to think about internal threats, something to do with maybe a malicious employee or even just someone that's disgruntled about leaving the company, and you may not have revoked their access as soon as you probably should have. And that's what we've thought about when we've added what's called our recycling bin. So if someone does attempt to delete the backups that have been created within the Cloud Connect software from their side, it actually goes to a separate sector on the Cloud Connect provider side so that you're not able to see it anymore, but it's still inside of a place where it can still be restored from and brought back in case of accidental or malicious deletion.
Okay, so that's again another important thing to think about is not just the external threats, but those internal threats and how you mitigate them. If we look at combining this from a service provider's perspective, we look at what Managecast are able to provide is very different layers in terms of utilizing the benefits of Cloud Connect with the benefits of Zadara and its separation and isolation, where it's able to offer different tiers, different layers, depending upon the services that you're actually going to take. And I think what Nathan referred to earlier on in terms of the excellent application that Managecast have built to provide automation around disaster recovery, I think enables that simplification, and combined with the ability to recover is a really key differentiator of really why to utilize a service provider like Managecast rather than trying to do this completely on your own. And I'm going to hand over to Nathan now to really drill that message home in terms of the full capabilities of Managecast.
All right, thanks, Steve. I think you did a great job overviewing that. And again, Managecast is really focused around data protection. Hopefully you've picked that up by now. And we understand the needs of many different organizations, and we provide a lot of flexibility in how you protect that data. Veeam represents 80% of the business that we do, and so we obviously have a deep expertise in the Veeam platform. And we provide multiple levels of service, such as managed backup, both locally and offsite, as well as local or offsite disaster recovery, including purpose-built hardware appliances. And we can also provide archive services for old or retired data that still needs to be protected. Obviously, you can back up or replicate your data to our data centers, but we also help clients with private cloud or hybrid deployments in which Veeam runs internal to the organization. We also help protect data within the AWS and Azure clouds, including Office 365. And Zadara greatly enhances our Veeam services and helps us address those who want the highest level of ransomware protection. You go to the next slide. So a few advantages of using or leveraging our expertise. When you look at the total cost of ownership, we can offer services for much less than on-prem deployments. And keep in mind, the true cost of a solution is not what you pay for it, but the effort it takes to operate and maintain that solution over its lifetime. And we help our clients easily meet the 3-2-1 rule of backup, or as Corinne mentioned, the 3-2-1-1-0 rule of backup, as well as other best practices. And Managecast has a team of seasoned Veeam experts with deep knowledge and experience with ransomware protection and disaster recovery. And we also offer disaster recovery as a service in which you can easily fail over your IT systems, and we can also enable easy disaster recovery testing. And most importantly, by allowing our team of experts to assist you in protecting your data, we free you to focus on more strategic initiatives. As I like to often say, backups are like going to the dentist. It is something everyone needs to do, but no one looks forward to it. And so we're here to make going to the dentist as effortless and painless as possible. And if anybody would like to have individual conversations to discuss backups, disaster recovery, immutable storage, ransomware protection, I'd be glad to have that conversation. Thank you.
Thanks, Nathan. So really to try and wrap this up, this is a combination of what we believe is best in breed. Zadara is best in breed in terms of 100% OpEx storage solution combined with the best of breed in Veeam's backup and disaster recovery software, and Managecast as the experts in combining these technologies to deliver a backup and disaster recovery as a service, but providing expert levels of service wherever you actually need them, whether that's on premises or via the Managecast cloud, and utilizing all of those features around immutability or air gapping that is critical to ensure that you combat your ransomware threats. So I'm going to finish off with this part, just looking at making sure that you have a different thought process. Make sure you have a plan. It's really important that you've thought about how you're going to protect your key systems and your data before you're impacted, not afterwards. Patch your systems. Make sure you're doing regular patch management. Make sure you're looking at those CCVE reports and doing something about them. Even last week there was a critical announcement that there's a vulnerability in Microsoft Windows that needs critical patching. You should be patching every one of your Windows servers right now. Endpoint protections. Make sure you've got up-to-date antivirus protections and endpoint mechanisms. Educate your people. The critical part is it's so easy for phishing attacks and people to be compromised socially, that you've got to educate your people to ensure that they understand these threats. Deploy multi-factor authentication wherever you can. Try and limit the impacts of people just having passwords that are reused in multiple locations. Combine multi-factor authentication with password managers, etc. And once you've done all of that, make sure that you've deployed a 32110 backup with air gap, and monitor and test. Corinne, I want to hand back to you and just a mention on Veeam One around that monitor and test and some of the things that organizations can get from Veeam One.
Yeah, Veeam One is not just a monitoring software. It's also has some built-in reports to be able to test if you may have ransomware in your environment. There's an entire report built around change rate. If your environment's slowly being encrypted in the background, there's going to be a high number of change rate, and other small reports like that can help give you kind of an alert before something bad happens. But it's just another layer. Having multiple layers and doing your due diligence to take all of these points and implement them into your environment is going to set you so much further ahead and make it so much harder for ransomware or any other types of attacks to happen. It's honestly just comes down to a numbers game at that point.
Cool. Thanks, Corinne. So in terms of this whole solution, Zadara and Veeam work extremely closely in terms of ensuring compatibility between our products. That provides a level of assurance that what Managecast are providing is fully supported by both Zadara and by Veeam to ensure that you're getting the best possible service available to you. And if you want to know more, Nathan, I'm going to hand back to you because you've got this capability that you want to be able to offer, that customers can sign up really simply and really easily via your fantastic application and portal.
Yeah, so I mean, obviously we want to understand the customer requirements and what the workload's going to look like and the backup data is going to look like. But we should be able to answer any questions you have about protecting your data or doing, disaster recovery, introducing the immutable storage and how that plays into the overall scheme of things. We would be happy to have a conversation regarding all the above.
Thanks,
Perfect.
Nathan.
Perfect.
So, Doug?
Yeah, please. What an amazing 45 minutes. Wow, this was great to get through. How do we start to put up the shields and the and the support systems around this thing called ransomware? And there were a couple of questions that came in while you were going on. I figured I'd let you folks just continue to cruise. But for the first question that came from Bill was, is Zadara certified by Veeam? So I'll let either Corinne or Steve, you want to handle that one?
Yeah, I'll take that one. We work extremely closely with Veeam. We've gone through the certification process for block storage and for our object storage and object with immutability. So our multi-tier capabilities is really a differentiator for Zadara from many other organizations. We have this wonderful platform that's able to deliver block file and object, and it's compatible with Veeam and certified for those primary tier and object tier backup repositories.
Exactly. And I'm going to do a follow-up question to that one, if I may. You mentioned data labs, and I know the whole OpEx part of this. You can spin up VPSAs, you can spin them down, you can do things like that. And data labs, tell me a little bit about how data labs really is this powerful tool to be able to spin up a VPSA perhaps, and then go through some testing of the actual backup to sort of simulate what you might have to do. So maybe Steve or Nathan, you might want to talk a little bit more about data labs.
I'll take that one. So our VPSA technology, we can create a new VPSA in as little as 90 seconds. That can be presented, and we're all API driven, so that can be presented as a new data store to a VMware environment, and then combining the data labs capabilities. You can select the restore point. Data labs gives you this wonderful isolated environment where you can test your recoverability. It also means that you can probably test your recoverability at a point when most organizations don't think of it. They think of DR tests as, oh, I've got to shut down absolutely everything on the primary site. I've got to fail over. That's a difficult ask for many organizations, where data labs enables you to test your recoverability. And you combine that with our VPSA technology, you're only going to pay for what you're using, rather than having to have something that's sat there maybe you're not utilizing for maybe 364 days out of the year.
That's exactly what I was thinking. Is some people will actually, they'll purchase and they'll have this recovery endpoint sitting there doing nothing for a while until they want to crank it up. So being able to create it in 90 seconds and then have it go away and stop paying for it is great. We have James that asked the question. I would be very interested in hearing about the CloudDR options for the solution, and how do I get a quote for such services? So CloudDR, not just backup and ransomware, but how about DR itself? So Steve, you want to jump on that one too?
Yeah, I think there's a really interesting point. Corinne mentioned this around Veeam's explosion into the hybrid IT, and it follows very closely to Zadara's model in terms of hybrid IT. We started as a cloud attached environment 9 years ago, providing storage to what Amazon couldn't do there at that point. And if you look at that today, you can use Veeam backup and recovery. Use a standard Veeam backup and recovery inside an AWS EC2 instance. And the target for that could be a Zadara storage environment that's managed by Managecast.
Perfect. Thank you.
Nathan,
Thank you.
here I can maybe add a few.
Yeah, please, Nathan. Yes.
To us, backup and DR are two different use cases. So the immutable object storage is really centered around the backup. DR is going to be we're replicating your servers to a DR environment and they're ready to be powered on. So there is no, recovery process. The issue is that DR is typically short-term retention. So if you had a ransomware infection, 3 weeks ago, your DR environment could be compromised, and that could create some complexity. And so kind of your last line of defense is going to that backup, and that's where the immutable storage comes in. And it is possible to do DR from backup, but your recovery time is going to be impacted. It's not just turning on a server; you have to go through a recovery. And I'd be happy to talk to anybody about disaster recovery versus recovery from backup. We have blog postings on that as well, but we offer DR as a service as well as the immutable backup storage.
Perfect. Nathan, you brought up a really interesting point there, which is, obviously we've got organizations that are moving to a cloud type environment, and the cloud providers don't actually provide a disaster recovery solution for their customers. Yeah, so they have to rely on organizations that can give them a level of expertise like Managecast to provide solutions around backup and disaster recovery. I think having an organization that's got expertise in Veeam becomes even more invaluable in those scenarios.
Yeah, and I agree. And I think there's a lot of misperceptions about cloud and what you get with that. I think a lot of people, will start using cloud and just inherently think their data is protected. And if you look at the shared availability or the shared responsibility model of the top cloud providers, the number one thing that the client is responsible for is the data. All right. And so even if you're using cloud technologies or hybrid, you have some on-prem, some cloud, you still need to think about how you're going to protect that data. And Office 365 is a good example of that, right? A lot of people moved Office 365. They contact us, say we don't need to back up our Exchange server anymore. We moved Office 365. Okay, great. Are you backing up Office 365? No, we don't have to. Like, okay, why not? Microsoft says you should, or basically they're saying that you're responsible for the data. So I think you're responsible for the data no matter where it lives. And so you should definitely be thinking about those things. And that's something we can help with. No matter where that data resides, we can usually help you protect it.
Perfect. And James, coming back around full circle, go ahead and go up to managecast.com/immutable. And there's a sign up for a free trial. They'll capture your information there. And then Nathan or one of his team members will reach out to you and have more of a conversation here. So thanks so much for that. Another question comes in from Janet. Have you seen ransomwares that targets Veeam backup? So that's kind of interesting. Rather than targeting at the data, have you seen anything out there that's actually, because I'm sure a lot of ransomware creators are knowing about Veeam and how protected that is, have you seen people that are attacking or targeting Veeam backup specifically? Maybe that's for you, Corinne.
So we do run on a lot of Windows type of protocols that procreate through the background. So if you're not locked down within the system, I could see that directly. I haven't heard of anything come through.
Yeah, I would imagine that. It's pretty solid. And then I have one more question from Anthony. What if ransomware lies dormant for weeks or months? How far back can that go?
I think that's probably one for me and Corinne, because we've regularly had when we did our webinar series, this was a constant topic in terms of ransomware lying dormant for 30, 60, 90 days, and sometimes you may not know that you've been compromised for way beyond your traditional backup window. And I think we tend to see people just thinking 30 days is enough, and if it's within your backup stream for 90 days, then maybe it's time to rethink where that immutable model extends to in terms of the time to go back to. Corinne, obviously you see these things from a daily basis. What are you typically seeing from a recovery perspective inside Veeam these days?
So sometimes it comes back to just having the conversation. Are you going to want to keep a longer retention? Do you have the resources to be able to do that? But we have a scan that we have directly within our software called Secure Restore, which will allow you to scan your backup. And if it does detect ransomware, you could have it automatically disable the NIC, manually go in and clean up that machine if you still need to be able to get that data. So we'll let you know if it's still infected, how far it's back and has been infected, or if you want to have a conversation about having older recovery points, such as a grandfather, son, father type of situation.
So you bring up an interesting point there, Corinne, about ensuring that you're testing your backups, but also that you're scanning your backups as well, which is an important feature that Veeam brings into its portfolio.
Perfect, perfect. Well, that's the end of the questions that I've gotten to. Thank you so much for answering those questions and sticking with us. I guess I'll, Nathan, you're sort of our sponsor here and our host. You have final words before we let everybody go.
I just want to thank everybody for the time that they spent with us. Hopefully it was informative. And again, we're here to answer any questions you might have about Veeam, backup, DR, immutability, ransomware. We'll be very happy to work with anybody on that. We have a lot of years of experience, and hopefully our experience will benefit you.
Perfect. So with that, I'm going to turn everybody loose. Thank you so much for joining us today, and I hope this was really beneficial. Have a great afternoon. Have a great rest of your morning. Bye now.
Bye.